They didn't fire me because I was bad at my job. They fired me because I didn't use enough emojis. My name's Daniel Blake. I'm 47 years old, and until 2 Tuesdays ago, I was the Senior Client Relations Manager at ArcLight Strategy Partners, a boutique consultancy firm in Midtown that prided itself on disruptive innovation with grounded insights. That tagline was mine, by the way. It made the website header in 2014, back when the website had a dark blue banner and people still read mission statements. For 21 years, I showed up early, stayed late when needed, and never missed a single client check-in. I built trust, the old-fashioned way. Listening, remembering birthdays without a calendar prompt, delivering exactly what I said I would. I didn't rely on cheap tricks or memes to keep billion-dollar clients happy. My results spoke louder than any emoji ever could. That morning, I was finishing a quarterly recap for an industrial manufacturing client we'd held since 2006. Clean formatting, bullet-pointed highlights, and a closing line I'd used dozens of times. Looking forward to discussing Q3 strategies on Thursday. Just as I hit send, a Slack message popped up from Cassidy. "Hey Dan, can you pop into the collaboration room?" The smiley face was already a red flag. Cassidy Jameson had been my supervisor for exactly 2 months. She arrived with a hybrid title, Director of Client Experience and Digital Fluency, and a brand new standing desk that required an entire reconfiguration of the floor layout. Cassidy wore matching yoga sets with business blazers, had a portable ring light for Zooms, and brought in a 10-gallon water jug with "Sip Happens" scrawled in pink font. Everyone under 35 seemed enthralled with her. I wasn't sure if she was a genius or a walking HR violation waiting to happen. When I stepped into the glass-walled room, she didn't offer me a seat. Instead, she spun her iPad around and tapped the screen. "So, I wanted to talk about your client comms," she said brightly. "I've been reviewing your threads and I noticed they're kind of cold." I blinked. "Cold?" "Yeah, like professional, but..." She wrinkled her nose, the way someone might if they smelled an old sandwich. "There's just no vibe, you know?" "No vibe." She nodded, flipping through what I realized were screenshots of my texts and emails. Like this one. "Confirming Friday at 2 p.m. will include revised deck by EOD. That's technically fine, but it's not sparkly. Clients want to feel energy, Dan. Trust is emotional. Emojis help build that bridge." I stared at her. "I mean, look at how Kyle does it," she continued, swiping to a message from one of the new hires. "Friday works. Can't wait to brainstorm and crush Q3. That kind of energy connects. It's human." I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I've worked with that client for 16 years, I said carefully. "They don't want sparkle. They want precision. They want to know the numbers are right and the deliverables will arrive on time, which they always do." Cassidy smiled, and I swear, it was the kind of smile you reserve for a dog who just peed on the rug. "You're not wrong, but the landscape's changing. Authenticity is the new professionalism, and I just don't feel like your tone reflects where we're going as a brand." I glanced past her at the hallway. One of the interns walked by, wearing AirPods and a hoodie that said, "Slay the KPI." I looked back at Cassidy. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying it's time we evolve our communication style, and after some tough conversations with leadership, we've decided to make a change." She hesitated, just long enough to make it sound difficult. "We're transitioning your role to Kyle, effective this week." "Kyle," I repeated slowly. The guy who thought convertible note referred to a car. Cassidy didn't laugh. "Kyle has a lot of potential." "And I don't." "I think you've given this company everything," she said, leaning forward slightly. "But you're not current, Dan. You're great, but not current." I waited. I thought about my son, starting college in the fall, about the mortgage, about how just last month I was named in a client's thank you speech at a national summit. But I didn't argue. I didn't plead, or yell, or toss a stapler across the room. Though I can't lie, the idea crossed my mind. Instead, I stood up, extended my hand, and said, "Thanks for the conversation." Cassidy looked almost disappointed that I didn't beg. She gave me a firm shake, flashed another smile, and said, "Wishing you all the best, Dan." Seriously. I packed my things that afternoon. Just one box. A framed photo of my wife and kid, the coffee mug that said, "Data don't lie," and a few notebooks filled with client notes I wasn't supposed to take with me, but did anyway. As I walked through the lobby, Kyle was at the reception desk showing someone a TikTok on his phone. He had a backwards hat on and an unbuttoned flannel. I caught a glimpse of his screen, a draft of the monthly newsletter. The subject line read, "Let's get lit." I walked past him, silent. Outside, the city looked the same. Summer sun glinting off the buildings, taxis honking, people moving fast. But something inside me was beginning to change, and it wasn't going to be pretty. 5 days out of work, and I was still waking up at 6:30 like my body hadn't gotten the memo. Showered, shaved, collared shirt, even shoes. I'd stand in the kitchen holding my mug like I had somewhere to be, staring out the window while the neighborhood emptied into traffic. Like clockwork, the same woman walked her dachshund in a pink harness. Same kid skateboarded past the bus stop with earbuds in. Same city, different me, a man with too much time and nowhere to aim it. I'd never realized how much of my identity was tied up in being needed. My phone used to buzz before I could finish my first sip of coffee. Clients confirming meetings, asking for data pulls, praising deliverables, even the occasional emergency. Now, silence, except for spam calls from some guy named Jacob, offering me solar panels and a robo-voice trying to sell me car insurance. I don't even own a car. On day 3, I tried reorganizing the garage, labeled bins, donated junk, swept out a small mountain of sawdust. Day 4, I alphabetized the pantry. That took 15 minutes. Spent the rest of the day watching a documentary on industrial steel, just to feel close to something that made sense. Then came day 5. It was 9:14 a.m. I was halfway through reading the same article on economic forecasts for the 3rd time when my phone rang. A number I recognized, one of my former clients. A big one, Fortune 500, the kind that expected precision and discretion. I answered immediately. "Dan," the voice said, "please tell me you're still with ArcLight." There was a pause. I could hear traffic in the background, maybe a coffee machine. "I'm not," I said. "Not anymore." Jesus, that explains a lot. "What's going on?" He sighed. "We've been trying to get answers from your replacement. Kyle, he just doesn't respond. Or he does, but it's..." He trailed off. "We asked about the Q3 analysis, and he sent back a GIF of a rocket launching." I rubbed my eyes. A GIF. With the caption, "Let's blow this thing up." Dear God. That's not even the worst part. He called our quarterly review a vibe sesh, in writing. A part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to drive to ArcLight and flip a conference table. Instead, I asked, "What do you need from me?" "Everything you used to do. Same pace, same precision, off the record if you have to. Can you consult independently?" There was no hesitation. Yes, absolutely. He sighed again, but this time with relief. "Thank God. We'll call it advisory. I'll get procurement to route it through our freelance services line. Keep it simple." I hung up, heartbeat tapping against my ribs like it was remembering how to work again. I just stood there for a second, phone still in my hand, staring at the backsplash tile I suddenly hated. Then I moved. Fast. I hauled the old laptop out of the closet, the one I hadn't touched in years, dusty, slow, and full of forgotten passwords. Took me 2 hours to get it running. It made a noise like a jet engine, but it booted. I opened Chrome, created a new Gmail, danielblake.consults@gmail.com. No flair, no emojis, just the facts. Then I did something I hadn't done since 2003. I drafted an invoice under my own name. Simple header. My name, address, rate. I sent it off, and then I sat back and waited, feeling something crackle back to life in my chest. The next morning, I got another call. Different client, different industry. Same story. "Is this Dan Blake?" the voice asked. "Yes." "Thank God. Is it true you're gone from ArcLight?" "I am." "Well, do you do private work now?" "I do." They didn't even hesitate. "We're in." This time, they forwarded an email thread with Kyle. I scrolled through it in disbelief. One of his proposals ended with, "This is gonna slap." Slap. Like a TikTok track. It wasn't even a complete sentence. By the end of the day, I had 3 new contracts in motion. I wasn't stealing anything. These were people calling me, because the guy with fire emojis couldn't tell the difference between net revenue and gross margin. I went to bed that night, with my mind racing. My wife noticed the change before I even said anything. "You're smirking," she said. "You never smirk." "I think I accidentally started a business today," I replied. "About time," she said, and kissed my forehead. I didn't sleep much. Ideas kept rolling in. What if I built a real brand, something clean, sharp, built on actual experience instead of catchphrases? No fake trends, no jargon, just reliable results, delivered with dignity. The next morning, I bought a domain. I started sketching out a logo in a notebook. By noon, I'd taken 3 more calls. One client asked, "What do you call your company?" I didn't have an answer. So I gave them the truth. Just me, for now. Daniel Blake Consulting. Simple. Quiet. Solid. And just like that, the man with too much time had something better. Purpose. I didn't go looking for them. The calls just kept coming. One here, one there. Always with the same breathless tone at the start, like they were checking if I'd somehow gone into witness protection. "Dan, it is you. Thank God." I made a rule early on. No outreach, no pitching, no undercutting. I wasn't about to become the guy dragging old coworkers through the mud or cold calling clients I'd once served with pride. But if the phone rang, I answered. And when it did, it always started the same way. Confusion, frustration, disbelief. Then quietly, a request. "Would you consider working with us again? Off the books even. We just need you back." Each time, I said yes. Calmly. Like I wasn't already half out of my seat ready to shake their hand through the phone. The first few contracts came small. Advisory hours, quick audits, reviewing strategy decks. But then came the big ones. Legacy clients. The type that don't move easily. One had been with ArcLight for 12 straight years under my care. Never once missed a deliverable. Never once broke budget. I'd left their last Q2 roadmap teed up before I was pushed out. A week later, Kyle apparently sent them a trend deck filled with buzzwords, stock gifs, and a Drake meme labeled "Recession?" I don't know her. They sent me a screenshot. I nearly dropped my coffee. "Dan," the COO said over the phone. He literally put a TikTok link in the middle of a pricing review. I didn't ask why. I just said, "Send me what you've got. I'll clean it up." That job led to another, then another. My inbox went from cobwebs to chaos. I spent the next few weeks stitching together old systems, building spreadsheets from scratch, and relearning how to write proposals, not as part of a team, but solo. Every detail was mine again. Every win, too. One afternoon, I got a call from a procurement manager I hadn't heard from since 2017. "Hey, Dan," she said. "We're done with ArcLight, and we want you to take the whole account. Full transition, NDAs inbound." I opened the document. Right there, in black and white. Client is terminating all services with ArcLight Strategy Partners effective immediately. There was a clause in bold. No mention of this transition to public channels. We don't want to be associated with that Gen Z chaos show. Their words, not mine. I signed it the next morning. My home office transformed overnight. The old squeaky chair was replaced with a Herman Miller I'd been eyeing for years, but never had the excuse to buy. My wife surprised me with a small cake the night I landed my fourth returning client. Vanilla with cream cheese frosting and a tiny fondant laptop on top. She said, "You're glowing." And I realized she was right. For the first time in a long while, I felt useful again. It wasn't just about the money, though I won't pretend that didn't help. It was the rhythm, the problem solving, the quiet satisfaction of fixing something that someone else had botched. My days had structure again. My nights, peace. I heard bits and pieces through the grapevine. ArcLight's numbers were down. Cassidy had posted a LinkedIn article about embracing discomfort during a brand transition. Kyle had apparently locked himself out of a shared folder and blamed it on a glitchy AI assistant. Clients were spooked. Interns were leaving. A rumor floated that Cassidy had started holding meme curation meetings every Thursday to reignite morale. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. One of my newer clients, a biotech firm I'd only started working with a few months before I was cut, asked me during a call, "Do you ever think about going back?" If they asked? I laughed before I could stop myself. No. He smiled. "Good. You don't belong in a place like that anymore. You outgrew them." That stuck with me. I'd been thinking of myself as discarded, irrelevant, pushed aside for sparkle and slang. But maybe I hadn't been pushed out. Maybe I'd just stayed too long in a place that had outlived its usefulness to me. That evening, I sat in my office and looked around. Everything was mine. The setup, the schedule, the clients, the standards. No more buzzwords, no more Slack pings asking if I could hop on a quick vibe check. Just real people with real businesses who wanted results. I still didn't use emojis, not out of spite, just because I didn't need to. The work spoke for itself, same as it always had. And now, finally, so did I. The first real sign of the collapse came in the form of a mass LinkedIn update. 12 employees from ArcLight all pursued new opportunities within 24 hours. Some were junior analysts, a few senior project leads. One of them had been there longer than me. That's how I knew it wasn't just trimming fat. It was fire suppression. The fire had spread. A week later, Kyle was transitioned into an internal development role. That's how Cassidy phrased it on the post. A beige paragraph about growth, realignment, learning through failure. Someone in the comments wrote, "Proud of this culture of accountability," and I had to walk away from my screen. I wasn't celebrating. Not exactly. Sure, I had clients, work, autonomy. There were days I woke up buzzing, already halfway through my to-do list in my mind before I even reached the kitchen. But I was also tired. A kind of bone-deep fatigue I hadn't anticipated. No assistants, no IT team, no one to bounce an idea off or chase down late invoices. If a software update failed, I was the help desk. If a PDF didn't load right, I had to troubleshoot it, re-export, resend, double-check. I had traded the dysfunction of ArcLight for the full weight of self-reliance. And something else was happening. Something I hadn't expected. Clients started asking for different kinds of things. A project lead wanted a quick voice note about her pitch deck, rather than written feedback. Another wanted to know how my weekend went before we dove into metrics. One CFO asked if I could just hop on a casual Zoom to vibe check the market tone. That last one nearly made me gag, but I said yes. Because here's what I was starting to see. The world had changed. Not everyone was Kyle. Not every emoji user was a clown with a ring light. Some of them were sharp, thoughtful, human. And that was the part I'd been missing. I'd spent so many years under fluorescent lighting, speaking only when data was in my hand. I'd forgotten what it meant to connect without a PowerPoint buffer. At ArcLight, client relationships meant status updates and tight decks. Now, out here, it meant being real, but still reliable. So I started experimenting. Instead of long-winded bullet lists in a sterile PDF, I tried recording short audio notes. Hey Sarah, just listened to the investor call. Here's what stood out to me. My voice, my tone, no sparkles, no slang, just me, being present. I asked clients how their vacations went, asked about their kids, sent book recommendations. A few started doing the same. I got one message that just said, "This reminds me of something you said last quarter," followed by a screenshot of a news story. That never used to happen. I wasn't becoming Kyle. I wasn't dropping TikToks into project timelines. But I was softening, or maybe rehumanizing. It felt good. Somewhere in the middle of all this, I launched a monthly roundup email. I called it The Signal. It was clean and crisp. A few paragraphs, some curated insights, one bold prediction. But at the end, I added a new section, the human bit. That's where I shared something real. A lesson from my week, a client win, a personal miss. One time I wrote about my son applying to internships and how weird it felt watching him navigate the same world I'd just been ejected from. Another time I wrote about burning out, how I once logged 14 straight hours and forgot to eat. People responded, not just politely, thoughtfully. They forwarded it, replied, said things like, "You're the only consultant I read every month." One client said it helped him feel less alone in a room full of noise. Another said, "This is the only email I open before my coffee." I was evolving, not to keep up with Kyle, but to grow past him, past the firm, past the outdated idea that dignity and warmth were mutually exclusive. One night, my wife found me in the office past midnight. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You working or writing a novel?" she asked. "Neither," I said. "Just thinking about tone." "Tonal consulting. Is that a new package?" I smiled. "Might be." She stepped forward and kissed the top of my head. "You seem more like you now than you have in years." I didn't say anything. Just let her words hang there. She was right. I had built something that was mine, and I was still building it, learning where to bend, where to hold firm, when to say, "No, we don't do things like that here," and when to say, "Tell me more." The fire had spread, sure, but it had cleared space too, burned down the false comforts, revealed what I was capable of standing on my own. And now? Now, I was learning to speak again. Not louder, just clearer. The message came on a Tuesday, like most things in my life used to. It was late afternoon. I'd just finished prepping for a client onboarding call, second one that week, and was closing tabs when I saw it. The subject line was simple. "Hey." The sender's name made me pause. Cassidy Jameson. I clicked. There were no gifs, no sparkle, just a short message, written in lowercase, like she wasn't sure how formal to be. "Hi, Dan. I think I owe you an apology. I'm no longer at ArcLight. Left a few weeks ago. A lot changed, maybe too fast. Anyway, I just wanted to say, I see it more clearly now, and I wanted you to know that. Best, Cassidy." I stared at it for a full minute. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I didn't feel what I thought I would. No vindication, no surge of triumph, just clarity. Cassidy had pushed me out of a job I thought I'd retire from. She handed my work to a kid who sent fire emojis in financial proposals. She dismissed 2 decades of relationships as lacking sparkle. And yet, looking back now, I didn't hate her for it. Because she was right, not in her methods, or her replacement, or her entire glitter-drenched philosophy, but in one central truth: I wasn't evolving. Not until she forced me to. I could have written back a dozen different things. Snarky, smug, professional, dismissive, but none of them fit. Instead, I kept it simple. Hi, Cassidy, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Truthfully, getting let go was the best thing that could have happened to me. I didn't see it at the time, but it gave me space to rebuild and to reconnect with the parts of this work I actually love. No hard feelings. Wishing you the best in whatever's next. Dan. She replied 20 minutes later. Just 2 words. Thanks, Dan. Signed off with, Best, Cassidy. No emojis. I laughed out loud, not cruelly, not bitterly, just genuinely, like something in the universe had exhaled with me. That night, I sat out on the porch with my wife. We didn't talk much. She read a book. I watched the sky shift from amber to blue. It occurred to me that I hadn't thought about Arclight in days. Not really. Not the way I used to. The rage, the confusion, the bruised pride. It had all faded into something quieter. Something like peace. The next morning, I brewed my coffee, black with 1 sugar, and walked into my office. Sunlight spilled across the desk. I opened my laptop and joined the Zoom 5 minutes early, like I always do. The familiar logo of Westridge Solutions popped up. 16 years I'd worked with them, through mergers, pivots, new leadership, 3 recessions. Still one of my most trusted accounts. When the camera connected, I saw Marcia, the VP of Ops, smiling. Dan, she said, good to see you. You too. How's Maine? Raining, as usual. She leaned back and motioned to the person beside her. I want to introduce you to someone. This is Devin, new project coordinator, fresh out of NYU. Devin waved, early 20s, bright eyes, septum ring, wore a hoodie under a blazer, the new business casual. It's really cool to meet you, they said. I've read a bunch of your decks. They're so clean. I smiled. Thanks. I try to keep things simple. Marcia grinned. Devin's going to shadow this project from kickoff to delivery. No problem, I said. Happy to show you the ropes. Devin glanced at their screen. Just so I'm following, should I take notes the way you outlined in the Signal newsletter last month, with takeaways and forward actions at the top? I blinked. You read the Signal? Yeah, they said, grinning. That thing you wrote about burnout? Hit hard. Sent it to my group chat. I laughed, surprised. Well, I guess that makes you my first Gen Z subscriber, who actually quoted it back to me. Guilty, they said. Also, I love that you don't over-explain. You let people figure things out without dumbing it down. I nodded, the compliment landing deeper than I expected. Appreciate that. We got to work, efficient, focused, productive. Devin asked sharp questions, took notes without being told, didn't once try to lighten the moment with a meme. But when they dropped a well-timed thumbs-up reaction on Zoom, I didn't flinch. Because here's what I've learned. Emojis aren't the enemy. Neither are voice notes, TikToks, or 20-somethings in hoodies. The problem was never the tools. It was the shallow way people used them. Now, I judge differently. Not by age, not by tone, not even by style. I judge by how people listen. And Devin listened. Closely. When the meeting ended, I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and let the silence stretch. I didn't feel like I was clinging to an old world anymore. I didn't feel like I was running from the new one either. I felt like I'd found a space between the noise, a space that was mine, not because I'd changed everything, but because I chose what to change. And that made all the difference.